Robin the Boy Wonder will be teaming up with the Cape Crusader to defeat Bane in the Batman Missions Prison Breakout 3-figure exclusive set. Yes, this set includes 3 exclusive figures not available in individual release. And also, speaking of release, a big thank you to viewer Bill, who took the time to pick this up, a set I've still yet been able to find in Canadian stores. Now, just before we have a look at the figures, let's measure off and figure out how tall each one of these stand. There we go. Batman, if we switch it to inches, you're looking at 6.6 inches, or you're looking at 16.8 centimeters. As for Robin, take off the hold here, switch it over to inches once again. There we go. For Robin, put the tape measure next to him. He's a little bit shorter. He would be standing at 6.1 inches, or in centimeters, 15.5. Now let's have a look at Bane, who obviously, as you can see, is much taller than all 3 figures, well, all the other 2 figures. And Bane stands at, let's see here, Bane stands at 7.4 inches, or in centimeters, he'd be standing at 19 centimeters exactly. Unfortunately, the only one that gets accessories in this set is Batman. And what I could best describe as, well, they're sort of like armature, kind of armored up arms with what appears to be lights. I say that they appear to be lights because according to the package, I'll show you in a second, these are lit up, making me think that they might actually be lights in this case. Part of me also feels as if they could join together, but that not be the case. They're hollow on one side, fitting around Batman's arms. On the other side, pretty nice detailing here. Kind of gets a steampunk vibe happening here. To put it on Batman's arms aren't the easiest, to be honest. You have to fit it, well, he has the gauntlets here, obviously, on the side. He has to sort of fit his arm around it, and then somehow still manage to get it over top of his shoulder. This is not the most successful of things, I have to admit, and often at times it does look like it doesn't sit properly. Same thing on this side here. Now, unless I've got it the opposite way, because the reasoning why I say that, actually, you know what, we'll just bring the packaging in. There's the packaging right there. The reasoning why I say that is if you look at this part right here is the circle. The circle, I guess, is supposed to fit on this side. So maybe we actually are having it facing the wrong way here. It's supposed to be actually on the top of his hands rather than on the side. And again, fitting it over his hands, it just seems like there's not nearly enough clearance to get it around his shoulders. You get it to about there, which seems like it should fit, but then it doesn't clear the opening in which it's supposed to hold around his arms. Not unless you're just supposed to attach it to the top of his shoulders, and then the arm really, the hand isn't really supposed to attach to it. See what I mean? It doesn't really, if it's up here fitting perfectly, then down here it doesn't seem like it fits well enough. It almost needs to be just a little bit longer. If I fit it into his pegs of his hands, then up here it doesn't clear it. It doesn't clear his shoulders. So it's always a constant struggle, I find, trying to get these actually in place. We'll try it the other hand, on the other hand. And again, you just want to attach it. The gripping hand is going to hold that peg, but again, it just doesn't really sit all that well, in all honesty. I think the way I originally had it makes a little bit more sense. It does mean, though, that he's got it more so from the side. And it doesn't quite match then the box artwork, but at the very least, he at least looks like he's holding it a little bit better. Despite for the weak way in which Batman is holding these arms, the figure is almost identical to the one that we've looked at before. Of course, some color swaps have been made and some few additional parts have been added. Case in point, one of which being the side pouch, and a much more pocketed belt gets added to this particular Batman versus this one right here. Other than that, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot different between the two, other than a few different changes in paint application. I'm going to go ahead and just take these off for the time being, and we'll do again some little comparisons back and forth. One of the other things I've noticed about this Batman is that he's got this part right here is actually sculpted. It simply could have just been a paint issue, where they could have just painted the black on this side. As you can see, they've actually sculpted a defined line right around his pectoral muscles and up at the top area here. Again, I don't even know why they would have gone to that extreme, simply just painting it, because right down here it looks like the paint lines up to the side of his abdomens. I don't know why they just didn't simply, you know, continue the paint up here without actually going the full extent of retooling the torso area here. The head sculpts are identical to one another. Shy for, of course, this one does not have the pupils. This one does have the pupils. I'm rather digging the color palette here for Batman, as I best could describe it as almost like a blue-based gray. And again, you've got the real piercing jet black areas on the sides of his legs, of course his boots, and primarily up here. The Bat emblem also stands out rather nicely because you've got the additional black happening up here. Here it stood out well too, but it definitely looks quite good here on the black. Some additional colors added here. You've got now gold gauntlets rather than the black that were on that Batman right there. The cape is almost identical too. Doesn't look like there's anything that's been changed to it. And even also the boots. Let's just bring the Batman in here. The boots also look identical to one another. So it just goes to show, taking an existing mold, and even though they tweaked this up here a little bit, taking the exact same mold and simply just giving us a brand new color palette actually does make this Batman stand out rather nicely, I have to admit. Kind of almost even looks like a movie toy. Something like a Batman and Robin sort of Batman repaint that we would have gotten from Kenner. Posability on this guy. His head rotates all the way around. The shoulders hinge outward to about there. Basically, your stopping point is the plates that are on the shoulders here. That kind of limits what Batman can do past that point. The arms rotate all the way around. He does also have a bend in the elbow, which is right there. It's a little on the stiff side, and also rotates, and he also rotates in the hand. Waist swivels, despite for the fact that he's got all these extra pockets kicking around there, he still has full articulation in the waist. And unfortunately, as we've seen before with these ones, the legs only can do this back and forth, stopping abruptly here due to his bat butt, and being able to extend to about there. The legs sadly don't hinge outward. He does have a bend at the knee, however, and nothing in the foot. Peg holes, by the way, on the undersides of his feet. The figure seems to stand perfectly fine, though. Moving on to Robin. Now, I would have claimed that this guy was not an exclusive until I looked on the back of the packaging. Sure enough, I've seen a singular released Robin and just haven't gotten around to picking him up. And I thought this was exactly the same Robin. Well, it actually isn't. Looking at the packaging, there it is right there. The standalone Robin seems to have only the red going up to his waist, so he doesn't have the additional red on the sides, and his arms are solid green. Whereas here, you've got the red at the top and the green in the glove. Also, the knee pads are also painted green. Here, they're painted black. So while it does almost at face value seem like the same Robin, it actually isn't. There you go. Knowing is half the battle. Robin, I kind of wish could have come with accessories. He screams, and it not just be for the fact that he's got open hands, but he does seem like a figure that really warrants having an accessory. I suppose you could probably make use of some of these. And they do still fit on Robin. In fact, almost they fit a little bit better on Robin because he doesn't have the big bulkiness in the shoulder pads. Still doesn't sit quite flush to the shoulders, unfortunately. Now the standalone Robin is also going to come with like a spear sort of staff, which I might ultimately just display him. I might even display him with this Robin. I don't know. I haven't, like I said, picked up that Robin as of yet. A decent looking head sculpt. It looks like it takes some cues from like the Joel Schumacher Robin, at least the way his armor is, and a little bit of like Nightwing, a very Nightwing sort of mask. Hair sculpt is pretty good, combed quite nicely back. You can see you can see it actually where the hairs have been combed back and they're layering themselves over top of the hair on the top of his head. Armor is pretty decent here. Paint is pretty good as well. The gold on the individual snaps on the front of his armor, and then you've got the gold and on the interior of the R, as well as the outside. Similar gold to the utility belt. And then the rest of the figure is primarily just black, red, and green. And the green actually is nice and clean. Paint generally is actually clean on the figure as a whole, even like really for Batman. Same sort of felt cape, which is actually funny because the felt cape almost feels like it should be flipped the other way. Like this material should be on the outside. I don't think it would make much sense to have the felt on the interior, but it almost seems like this is a better cape material to go with rather than having felt. It just kind of seems a little out of place. It's been slotted into the top of his upper torso, where you also are treated to the trademark DC Comics 2018. Luckily, the cape is hiding a lot of that. Post Billy and Robin, exactly the same. Head rotates back and forth, up and down. Somewhat still limited arms. They're only really going to go about there for the same reasoning as Batman. He's got this big, clunky shoulder joint or shoulder plate right there that limits moving the arms past that point. The arm still, however, can rotate all the way around. Bend at the elbow, rotation in the forearm, and rotation in the hand. Waist swivel. And still very relegated to the old like 90s design of legs. The legs only do this. Part of me would love to have these hinge outward, but that's not really what they've got intended for this line. Bend at the knee, and nothing in the articulation in the foot. By the way, I'm just going to move Bane over for a second. Put Batman next to Robin. I know that's Robin currently we're looking at. There's Robin, there's Batman. Some other size comparisons. We'll bring in a couple other figures we've already looked at from this line. There's the Joker. I did, however, see Tropical Shirt Joker, which I think had a launching missile. At the time of this review, I have yet to pick that one up. I hope to soon. And then one of my personal favorites, I might even say this is the figure of the line. She almost even stands out, I think, versus some of the other figures in this line, because the face sculpt is that good. But there's also Harley Quinn. This represents, by the way, this represents the sole line of Batman mission figures that I've looked at, and currently I can find in stores. That's actually not true. Could find the Robin, I could find Tropical Shirt Joker, and I might still pick those up. Apparently there is a Mr. Freeze out there kicking around. I've yet to find him, though. So we'll go ahead and move these ones out of the way. And now let's have a look at the big one, the big behemoth of this set. And that is Bane. Nice looking Bane, I have to admit. Very broad. He's very square-like in the torso. There's really no definition in which that this tapers off into a waist. Instead, it's just sort of a big, blocky Bane. The head sculpt is rather interesting. It sort of takes some cues from the original Bane, the original Luchador Bane. It kind of actually looks like the grill of a truck as well. Very menacing, very cool though. Primarily, his coloring is all like this black color. Although, to be fair, as you get further down, it almost looks like it's almost got a bluish tint to the black. And by contrast, the top is a little bit more matte, whereas the bottom is a little bit shinier of a plastic. Big, bulky belt. Really, bulk is the best way to describe this figure. He's bulk all around. The back has a battery compartment, which you can technically unscrew and I suppose change the batteries when you eventually want to, because he does have a light up option. Simply just press the button on the front, and it presses 3 different times. The first time is a steady on light, the second is a pulsing light, and the third turns it off. So we'll go ahead and press it the first time. You can see his chest lights up. Pressing it a second time. There we go. Pressing it the first time. Pressing it the second time is the steady light. There you go. So it's actually 2 settings, not 3. The first one is the pulsating, and then the second one is kind of the pulsating, steady, and then shut down. There you go. This one flickers, and this one here kind of pulsates and then flickers a little bit. It might very well actually be the exact same operation. Maybe there isn't any difference between the two. It looked for a second when I was cycling through it that there were 3 different distinct options here, but maybe there is only 2. Starts for a little bit, a steady light, it pulsates and then shuts off. Press it again. Maybe the pattern is slightly different. I'm not really quite sure. But what I do know though is I'm going to go ahead and cut the lights, as of course a lot of what we're seeing right here gets lost a little bit with the lights going on right now. Let's see how Bane looks though in the dark. And still here, we're going to go ahead and press the button again. And one more time. It's rather interesting that the camera isn't picking it up as well as I would hope. The mask actually does a rather nice job of illuminating, especially on the top portion of his head. I'll show you that again when we have the lights going. The chest actually has a lot more visible places of having a translucent plastic so that you can make out a little bit more of these little side details around the chest area. It's unfortunate that the camera just isn't picking this up as well as I'm seeing it in person. You would just have to take my word for it. Yes, what I was talking about is right here on either side and down below, it's not quite the same plastic as what they used on the side. As a result, this is the whole area here in which the light shines through. And again, it's not as good showing it here. If I tip the camera ever so slightly left and right, you can see how that section, this translucent section, lights up green. And in addition to that, we look at his face. His eyes light up or somewhat light up. Primarily, most of the light seems to be here. Now, he does have a head rotation, which makes me lead to believe, I don't know if I can actually take the head off. Probably what it is it's just one light that projects straight up, and then it's whatever the head can currently catch, depending on which way it's facing. So you can see a little bit of it sticking through the eyes. The neck area lights up, and then the top area. Yeah, that's that one big solid light projecting its way through the ball joint. When it comes to Bane's articulation, he has about the same, which is really disappointing because at the very least, for a bigger figure, I would have hoped he would have had at least the hinging outward. His head rotates back and forth, up and down, but it's not really the most up and down as one would expect. That's about all you're really going to get is left and right. The arms, however, hinge outward, not restricted at all like Batman and Robin are. They rotate all the way around, bend at the elbow, and you can also rotate the forearm, and you can rotate the hand. The upper torso waist swivels, because really all the mechanics are right here. There's nothing that gets jeopardized by having the waist incorporated as a swivel point. You can still see, even with the light on, I can rotate the waist perfectly fine. Limited again to the standard articulation, but at least he has hinging in the foot. His boot also rotates, which is one thing that he does have extra. And then he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. A decent interpretation of Bane. I'm liking him. I like the bulkiness of him. The light up gimmick is pretty good. It could have been a little bit better. But overall, I really like this set. The Batman Missions set as a whole, the Batman Missions line, is pretty good. It has ups and downs. I think the highest point so far, the all-star of this wave, is really the Harley Quinn. I still love that figure. That might actually be one of my current favorite Harley Quinns, and it's coming from a retail line like the Batman Missions. Due to his bulky nature, Bane is usually relegated to a box set, an exclusive if you will, where a lot of times, and 9 times out of 10 we've gotten this in the past, you may get figures that you already have just in order to get yourself a Bane. Batman Missions, on the other hand, at least you get 2 exclusive Batman and Robin figures to go along with the exclusive Bane, in the sense that you are getting repaints to existing figures, in some cases slight remoldings as we saw with Batman, that it does warrant getting the set not only just for getting Bane, but for the fact that all 3 figures in this case are all exclusives. All 3 figures I think are really good. The Batman, I like his dark, almost bluish gray color palette, and Robin is a nice touch, slightly mixing up a little bit from his singular card release. And of course then there's Bane. A nice big bulky Bane with a rather new different take on his mask. Kind of almost looks mechanical, almost like a grill that you would see on the front of a truck. I like his design, and I like the fact that he does have a light up gimmick, but it doesn't limit the figure. You can still rotate him at the waist. It's not something in which now he only has rotation in the arms and the legs. You still get full range of motion, and you do have a light up option on Bane, which is good. The light up option doesn't do the greatest of jobs of lighting up all the details on Bane, but at the very least it does sort of simulate the sense that he's being pumped with venom. Nice job. By the way as well, big thank you to Viewer Bill, I always call him Viewer Bill, for taking the time and picking this setup for me. Like I said, over the course of this review, I think near at the beginning of this review, I couldn't find this set anywhere. I checked my local retail stores in Canada, and somehow Bill's Canadian stores seem to fare a little bit better. He's been able to find them. I almost picked up this set on eBay, and thank goodness for Bill, he was taking the time and sending this my way, that I was able to have a look at this one today. So again, a big thank you, sir. You really didn't have to, and really thankful, ever so thankful that you took the time and you sent this my way. Today, though, we were having a look at the Mattel. This was the Prison Breakout set, which came with an exclusive Batman, an exclusive Robin, and an exclusive Bane. I said exclusive a lot over the course of that last little bit. If you guys haven't had a chance and haven't checked out my previously looked at Batman Missions figures, don't worry, there's a playlist designated solely for that. It's called Batman Missions Figure Reviews. You should be able to see everything I've done up to this point. Also, make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below. It'll guarantee that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you'll never miss out. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.